last hand here is going to be one of my hands. And it really just has to come with like, are the games dead? Are the games dead? Like, are the games getting tougher? I mean, I just see this shit. It seems like it's constant. But this one was really flabbergasting, I got to tell you. Now, I'm going to give you the setup. This is at Encore Boston Harbor. And last week, so I was playing 2-5, and there was a tournament going on. This was on Wednesday afternoon, which is I usually play on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. There was a tournament going on, and they haven't done like a large buy-in tournament, I think even since before COVID. It was $1,000 buy-in tournament where there were 3 day ones. There was a day one on Tuesday through Thursday, and there was actually a re-entry, and then day two was on Sunday. So there were a lot of people there, and it seemed to me that people were kind of getting busted out of a tournament, and then they were filtering into the cash game. So there's a lot of like these kind of tournament fishy types of guys, kind of coming into the game. You know what I mean? But that's kind of the setup here. So this particular guy he had we were 375 effective. I mean, I had the table covered, but he started the hand with 375. He was probably right around my age. He was kind of wearing like a baseball cap. And we start the hand out here. He's in +1. So +1 with 375. He raises to 20. Now, some of these OMC types will raise to 15 in this game, but he raised to 20. The guy right to his left, and I said this in the podcast, like I called him an OMC. I've actually played with him before. He was immediately to his left, and he went to throw in a raise. Like he threw out 15. So if you can kind of picture it, this guy raises to 20, and immediately afterwards, the guy to his left, the OMC guy, goes to 15 because he didn't know the guy was in the hand. So the OMC guy tried to raise to 15, which is his standard open from +2, but he just calls like it's an accidental call. So OMC sort of accidentally calls when he meant to raise, calls the 20 from +2. There was another caller in between. I believe it was the hijack calls. And I'm on the button with pocket tens. Now, normally, I'm going to 3-bet this like all day, right? I mean, look at the spot. You get a +1 to 20. You get an OMC call. You get a hijack call. There's a lot of dead money out there. And, you're just getting an overlay, right? You've got 10-10. But what kind of stopped me here was the OMC wanting to raise from +2. And then the +1 guy kind of had somewhat of a little bit of an awkward-ish type of stack here for 375. So even though I would say 95% of the time I would 3-bet here, I decided to call for those reasons. So hero calls, and we go 4 ways to the flop. So the pot is $80. I've got pocket tens, a very, very hidden pocket tens on the button. The flop comes out Queen of Clubs, 10 of Diamonds, 5 of Hearts. And I'm like, okay, right? By the way, I should add here that the OMC guy, because I think this is important, had 1K as well, because it's definitely going to come into play. So Queen of Clubs, 10 of Diamonds, 5 of Hearts. And the +1 guy checks. I'm like, all right. And the OMC guy now bets, but he only bets 20. Remember, this is the guy that was trying to raise pre. OMC bets 20, hijack calls, and I'm like, okay, I've got 10-10 here. There's no 2 flush out there, but I really want to build the pot up here against the OMC guy. He was trying to raise pre-flop anyways. I mean, it's kind of weird, like this type of sizing that he used, but with 2 people to his left, I figured there's a very good chance that he had a queen here. At least a queen here. So I wanted to build the pot up against this particular guy. +1 guy, I was just, I assumed that he had just missed, right? He had just checked. So I raise. Hero raises to 90, and I'm looking at here, and I could probably would have made this a little bit larger, but I make it 90. So it goes 20 call, I go to 90. And now the +1 guy, this guy who busted out of the tournament, he calls. So the pre-flop raiser check cold calls. And then the OMC guy folds and the hijack folds. So OMC folds, +2 folds, hijack folds, and now we're heads up. So we put in 180, that's a 220, the pot's like 300. And immediately I'm starting to think about, I'm like, all right, well, this guy's fucking, he's going to have pocket queens here a lot, right? This guy from +1, this tournament player. I mean, he starts the hand with 375. He checks queen 10-5 rainbow, and now he's cold calling 90. Like it went bet, call, I made it 90, and now he calls. And he's leaving himself with like, whatever, 275 left. None of these guys, who's going to ever, if he was checking like pocket aces, pocket kings, something like that, is he really going to play it this way? He's probably just going to check jam, right? He's just going to get it in. So I'm immediately thinking, this guy's fucking got like queen. I mean, this guy's got like queen here. And what am I going to do? Right? Like what am I going to do? Maybe once in a while, if he's terrible, he might have some, I don't know, like ace king or something like that. So we're heads up, and I'm immediately thinking about this. And by the way, like he the way that he called, like I raised to 90, he was sort of doing like one of these things where he was like, you know, he had a very, very tough decision. You know what I mean? Like, you know how tournament players are, like, they move so slow. He had a very, very tough decision. And then it's kind of thinking, oh, and then he finally called. That's what he did, right? The turn was like an inconsequential, like, didn't even put a backdoor out there. It's like 3 of spades. So it's queen 10-5, turns at 3, totally rainbow board, pot's 300. And he's got like, what, like 265 left in his stack. He checks, and I'm just like, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I'm not going to like check it through somehow just in case he has something else. It is what it is. Like, he's got 375. I got middle set. I flatted instead of 3-betting pre. Right? So I'm not going to check it through. So he has like 265 left. I think I bet like 125. I could have gotten, could have even bet smaller. I should have probably bet like 100 here. You know what I mean? Like, if I bet 100 and he somehow calls, the pot's like 500 and, you know, he's got like 150 left. But I bet 125. And now he goes into the tank. Tank. Again, one of those things where he's like really, really pained. Looks at his stack, kind of like he's going to fold his cards. Looks back at his stack. And then he does one of these. I'm all in. I'm like, yeah, of course you are, buddy. So he moves all in, and I'm like, all right. So I'm like, all right, this is going to be one of these things. So here, obviously, I call, hero calls. And then the river rolls off like the king of clubs. And normally, this is kind of part of the reason why I'm telling this. Usually, I just fast roll my hand over. Like, I'm just going to turn my hand. But I was so dead set that the guy had pocket queens. When the king of clubs came out, we just sat there for a few seconds. Like, I didn't turn my hand over. He's not turning his hand over either. He's just sitting there, like not turning his hand over. And then we're finally just kind of like sitting there. And then, you know, one of the guys at the table says, it's on you, talking to the other guy, like, you know, he called you. You got to roll your hand over first. It's like, okay. And he rolls over ace, jack, offsuit. Ace, jack, offsuit. Owned. I was absolutely owned. He had major fold equity there with the check jam all in on the turn after I bet 125. Now, the reason kind of why I bring this up, though, as I brought up in the podcast a little bit here too, is that I never showed my hand on this one. I never showed my hand, and I really wish I had. I think it was actually a mistake that I didn't show my hand. I'm not talking about like fast rolling my hand first. I'm talking about I should have showed it as a bad beat. The reason why I bring that up is that if you have good mental game, and I think it's one of the strongest parts of my game mentally, a lot of people like to show their holdings because they want like sympathy. This is sometimes when you know somebody is like lying about their hand because, you know, they say that they got a bad beat, but they actually didn't show it. Of course, a guy would have showed like top full or something like that. Like if he lost top full, you know, to like quads. So when he says that, you know, it's not true. But actually, I want to show my bad beat because I do believe that if people see the fact that you actually got a bad beat, they will think that you are tilting because they would tilt themselves. This is exactly the same type of thing about how you can actually bet very, very thinly, like on very, very scary runouts, and people will think that you're actually polarized when you're not. If you can depolarize in that spot, depolarizing mean like sometimes bet like one pair on a 4-liner to a straight, because you might get hero called because that guy would never bet an overpair in that spot. You're either like representing a straight or a bluff, so you get called down more. If you actually get a bad beat, a really bad beat, and you can keep it together, people will think that you are tilting. It's almost like a short-term losing image when I talk about like image types of things. If you can pick up a big hand after that and keep it together, you can win some really, really big pots. So the information that you are conveying to the other people is actually almost like false information. It's bad beat information, but they're going to interpret it in the incorrect way, because if you have good mental game, it's not really going to affect you. And you're going to continue to play your good game. But the way that they react to you is they think you're going to start playing your C or a D game, because that's how they would play. And they're not going to believe you. And they're going to call you down even more. One of the best things in the world that could ever happen is if you get a bad beat and show it, and then the very next hand you pick up pocket ace or pocket kings, and you make it look like you're tilting. You absolutely make it look like you're tilting. Now, it didn't necessarily come into play for me that, like, it's not like I picked up aces or kings like the very next hand, although I did get involved like maybe 30 or 40 minutes later with a hand where I felt like maybe if I had actually shown my hand that I had gotten such a bad beat that there was a better chance that I would have gotten paid off when I actually made a hand and the guy was considering like possibly like bluff catching me. And because I hadn't shown my hand, I didn't get the call. So, I mean, it's something that, like I said, if you have very good mental game that you can kind of keep in your back pocket, if you can really keep it together. The crazy part of that whole thing is that I just usually roll my hand over anyways. Like, it's like if the OMC guy, if I was involved with the OMC guy in that hand and he was like calling me down and he check called river, like I would have just rolled my hand over. I mean, it would have been slightly different because I would have been first. But I usually just roll my hand over anyways. I was just so confident. And I had convinced myself that this guy fucking had pocket queens that I just never turned my hand over in the first place. But I should have after the fact, not for sympathy, but to convey misinformation. That was a point that I wanted to get across. Anyways, thank you guys very, very much.